How did Facebook find us? Nobody found us. We reached out to them. Telesign actually came out of an incubator. And this was an incubator back in 2005. I don't know if you guys can remember that far back. It was the year that AWS was launched, so nobody was really on cloud back then. When we launched, we had servers in our kitchen, in the kitchen of our office space that our tech team would actually refer to as the server room. So whenever we were referring to the server room, we were actually referring to our kitchen. It was a different time back then. For anyone who's not familiar with Telesign, we do two-factor authentication with text message. So anytime you enter in a phone number into a website or an app and you get a one-time passcode on your phone via text message, that is a service that we've been providing since 2005. And we also provide data around the phone number that you entered. The inspiration for the incubator was a guy that we knew who had started a backgammon website where you could gamble online. And the fraudsters had found his website and had figured out how they could steal money from him. And basically they were using stolen credit cards to put money on their accounts and then gamble on their backgammon games and then cash out. And so what he did was he started calling each of the people who was loading money onto their account. He would actually call them manually to make sure that they were legit. And obviously that's not scalable. As he grew the company, it became too much. So we were like, hey, we can automate this for you. And so that's what we did. And we actually automated sending calls with one-time passcodes that the users had to enter in order to verify their account. And that drove away the vast majority of his fraud. And so we were like, hey, let's actually turn this into a business. Once we figured that out, we started offering it to clients. And the way that we did that was we sent emails. We just sent tons and tons of spam is basically what it comes down to. We started reaching out to companies and getting feedback to see if they were interested. And what we found was there was actually a lot of interest in the technology itself. People were very interested in learning how it worked. We had discussions with eBay. And I mean, this was as a very small company. We just had really the 3 co-founders and a few technical resources from the incubator that were working on this project. And so we were super excited with all of this interest that we were getting. And then we would start talking to the companies, and the companies would ask us questions like, how many people are in your company? How much revenue do you have? How are other clients using you? And what we found was most of these big companies just weren't willing to take the risk on a small company that nobody else was using, right? You're not going to get fired for integrating a technology that all of your competitors are using. You might get fired for integrating a brand new technology from basically a 3-person company if something goes wrong, right? So it was just too big of a professional risk for a lot of people to take at the time. And what happened was we knocked on Craigslist's door. And Craigslist was having a lot of problems at the time with people posting, fraudulent ads of various kinds. Some were, kind of dangerous ads, like you didn't want to, they were having crime actually happen. There was a type of fraud called affiliate fraud that a lot of people were doing at the time and making really good money off of. And so Craigslist was trying to stop this. It was a massive problem on their network. And so they were willing to try basically anything. And so even though we rolled in with a very small company, brand new product, they were on it immediately. And so they integrated us. And we ended up working very closely with them when they first—
Did they pay you?
Sorry?
Did they pay you?
Yeah,
Craigslist.
they actually did.
Cool.
Yeah, they were a paid client, believe it or not. All of our clients were paid, actually. We were never giving it away for free. And our cost back then was actually quite high per call. So yeah, Craigslist integrated us. We were working with them very closely. So they would let us know that at first it was working really well and had stopped a lot of the fraud that they were seeing. Then they let us know that fraudsters were starting to get through the system. We actually found that we could go on black hat message boards where the fraudsters would communicate with each other and actually sit and watch and see what they were saying. And they would share their methods for how they were getting around Craigslist's phone verification. And so obviously we would learn from that and find ways to block along with Craigslist, find ways to block the different methods that they were using. And so we had to figure out how to stop those numbers from being used. And we just did a massive amount of research. We, worked in tandem with Craigslist. They would give us dumps of the numbers that had made it through. We would go and do the research and figure out how to identify them in the future. And that helped us create a new product. And that is a product that would basically tell them, is this a risky VoIP number or is it not? And when they put that product in front of the phone verification, it was like a bomb went off in Fraudsterville on the Black Hat message boards. They were freaking out. They couldn't figure out how to get through the system. They were borderline, borderline crying on the Black Hat message boards, basically that they were going to have to go get a real job, that this was the worst thing that had happened to them on Craigslist, et cetera. So that's how we knew that this was a very effective product, and that we could, take it to other clients and have it be effective, right? Have it be something that other clients would want. And so once we had this product really perfected and we had the name Craigslist behind us, we were able to go and open doors that we otherwise weren't able to open. So it just becomes a much different conversation when you walk in versus, telling someone that you have essentially no clients, no revenue, to telling them that you're working with Craigslist to stop some of the most difficult fraud that is happening at the time. The conversation looks much different. And so,
how long was that process, Stacy, from the time you got to that point? What was that year-wise?
So we started that company in 2005, and we started working with Craigslist, I want to say 2007. So it took us a couple of years to get to that point. I have to just pause for a second and say that working with Craigslist on that is really what helped us understand that phone ID, the phone data product, was something of value that we needed to be offering to all of our clients, and not, just sort of like a side product that wasn't super important. It really became a differentiator. And it helped keep competitors out for, I would say, a good 10 years. Nobody really understood. None of our competitors really figured out how we were doing it until maybe like 2015, something like that. Took a long time. And once we got Craigslist, we started, again, knocking on the doors of some really big companies. And so we started talking to the likes of Facebook, that was having some similar types of problems at the time. We started talking to Google, we started talking to Microsoft, and Facebook was the first one to come on. Again, we worked with them extremely closely at the time with their fraud prevention team that was having, again, very similar products. How did Facebook find us? Nobody found us. We reached out to them. Nobody was finding us at the time. We were doing massive amounts of email outreach. We were going to conferences. Our physical presence was not good. We were pretty unprofessional in the look of our stands, our conference stands, but people would come over, we would talk to them as they came over, we would explain the product and how it worked. And it was just very innovative at the time. There was nothing else out there. Everything else at these conferences, like RSA conference and the various security conferences, kind of looked the same at the time. We were offering something that, again, was pretty differentiated. There was nothing else like it. ROI on conference is a really good question. I'm not sure that you can ever really know the ROI on conferences. I think that it's great for branding and great for getting people familiar with the concept. I'm not sure that we could say for sure which clients actually came exclusively from a conference, though. We were probably already talking to most of the clients that we would meet with at conferences. And then, we would chat with them at the conference, get to know them better, see them face to face, and then they would come on board eventually. Maybe the same thing would have happened, but there is something to be said for being seen at a conference and for getting to, touch a bunch of your contacts at one time in person. Acquisition channels that were the best ones. Email was actually one of our biggest hitters, and we made a lot of changes in email. When we first started, we would send these long, complicated emails explaining exactly how the technology worked. That, most people don't pay attention to that, right? Who has time to read a novel when you're going through your email, especially when it's spam? So we got very, very quick and personalized over time to where we would just hit the top points. A lot of times we would do research on the types of fraud that the black hat message boards, the fraudsters on the black hat message boards were talking about for each particular client. And then we could even screenshot that. We could speak directly to that fraud in the emails and our reach outs. And that ended up being extremely effective. Most of the time, frankly, when we walked in the door to a client, we knew more about their fraud than they did, right? We would come in and be like, you have these problems. This is what these guys are doing. Here's the screenshots from the message board. Like, you need to fix this. Here's how we can fix it. So we were very consultative. And almost like consultants to a certain extent with many of our clients, even from the very beginning. And that was beyond effective because no competitor that ever popped up, even to this day, we don't have competitors that are that consultative with clients. Yeah, so after Craigslist, we had Facebook, then we got Google. And Google was really the one, I would say, that tested us in many ways.